Oh, wow.
This is my new office, and I think it turned out amazing. Mid-century modern meets cyberpunk. The boardroom of a starship, it was what I was going for, and I'm pretty happy with what I've achieved. It's a cozy enough space that Ruby will want to come hang out with me while I work, but still functional enough that I'm not going to be fighting myself while I'm working 80 hours a week, mostly in this room. I feel like I'm breaking some rules of YouTube by showing you the finished project before we've even begun. But this project almost broke me, so I want to approach things a little differently this time around. Quick note, this video is sponsored by PCBWay, more on that later. When I decided I wanted to rehab this office, I estimated it was going to be a week-and-a-half project. It's been the majority of the month of December. Let's back it up here. What problems did I have that needed to be fixed? Lighting in the space was terrible. Acoustics in this little box were not great. My organization system was effectively floor. I barely had a space to prepare my lunch, and the entire front of the office was glass, so sound, light, and temperature were difficult to control. This project went off the rails in numerous ways, and I'm going to tell you the story of all of it. But there's a bit of context I want to provide you that'll help the story make more sense. I'm autistic and have ADHD. I'm only telling you that as a lens to view this story through. I think it'll make more sense as I tell the tale. I mean, all we have to do is build the office of a starship. Oh, so simple, right? Nothing is ever simple. Stick with me here, and I think you'll understand by the end. Let's get started with the paint. This room was previously a bluish light gray. It cast a sickly pale light on me. I'm already transparent as a ghost, so it was not helping matters. So in comes a purple accent wall. One of my two brand colors, so this should be easy, right? It took 2 full workdays and 9 paint samples to get to this. On an intellectual level, I know that the way paint dries is going to change the way it looks, the lighting around it, the rest of your environment, and how it's picked up on camera. These are all variables, but that makes picking a color more difficult. I thought this would be the easy win of this project. Paint one of my 2 paint samples onto the wall, and then realize I hated both of them. Head to the store, pick more paint samples, get them mixed up, come back to the studio, paint them on the wall, pick the one that I think is just the best, send a photo of it to Ruby. We FaceTime for over an hour, picking colors and looking at different lighting environments on the simulator on the website to see what related to our environment, and finally landed on 3 more colors that got us to this purple. And in the end, I think it turned out awesome. I think it set the tone for this project. It started the vibe of what I wanted in this space, but I'm not 100% certain that I think it's perfect. The reality is that in my brain, I'm constantly chasing perfection and the vision that I had, but I can't always articulate or even understand what creates that. And I had to realize that I could have perfection in my head, or I could actually move forward in the real world. And that's what this color is. Moving forward. Now, we need to talk about the way the space sounds. This space is fairly compact with a narrow but long size and a low ceiling. A lot of hard surfaces everywhere means a lot of reflections of sounds for echo and reverb in my audio recordings. So I picked up these flexible PET acoustic panels that I've worked with in the past. They cut beautifully with a utility knife, a couple of swipes through it, and you can cut to your size. Some months back, I made this big silly contraption that pulls air through my office for heating and cooling it, but it required an intake vent in the wall. I put these acoustic pieces on that vent and around it for that video, then I used the rest of what I had to somewhat fill the wall. I didn't have enough to complete it then. That's what we're doing now, is finishing up where I left off. Now, of course, this wall does have receptacles and a light switch that I have to deal with. That's going to require some of these electrical spacers. These are specifically intended for this job. You stack them up, space out your whatever from its box so that it can be flush with your new wall material. And yes, I accidentally overcut this hole. A couple of scrap pieces cut and fit in there, and you can barely tell. But even with the addition of this material on the wall, it still sounds awful in here. I always knew one wall of this stuff wasn't going to be enough for this space, but I have another plan for our next step in improving our sound and aesthetics. Arguably the biggest visual change we're making, installing these acoustic wood slat panels on the wall behind me here for that peak 2025 YouTuber backdrop look. If you're not familiar, these are sheets of a similar acoustic material to that last stuff we were working with veneered strips of MDF stapled to the front of them. I went with a dark walnut for mine. The ones I'm using are called 8-footers. They actually measure 94.5 inches, and I need to cut them down to 91.5, which is where we start to spiral out off the rails again. Because I had the idea that I should model these up in CAD. Did I need to? No. I could have done napkin math and gotten the same end results of knowing how many I needed and moving forward with the project. I was already behind at this point. But every project I have at least one thing that becomes a bit of a compulsion, something that once I have the idea, I don't see a path forward unless I achieve it the way that I envision achieving it. In this case, it was a pretty simple one of just 3D modeling these. I was able to mock them up, make some fun animations, and you can benefit from it now by downloading them off printables if you want to use these models. Sometimes it's a lot more complex than that. I kind of got off lucky on this project. With the first one installed, my second one needs 2 receptacle openings cut into it, but I want to replace these silver outlets with some black ones that I hope will blend in a little bit better here. So I need to identify the circuit in my breaker box. So in comes an info dump on this little Klein tool that I picked up. I just genuinely really love this thing. It's a standard circuit plug tester, but it's also a transmitter. So it'll send a signal back to the fuse panel. The wand acts as a receiver. You just swipe it over the breakers and it'll beep more effectively over the one that is tied to that circuit. And you can just flip the breaker and safely replace the outlets. Once the outlets are replaced, in comes an absolutely ridiculous stack of spacers to meet those thicker wall boards we're installing. And stepping back to look at it, this is definitely bringing the visual impact that I was really looking for in this new backdrop in this project. But there was definitely a glaring issue. You might have noticed that at some point the trim on these doors disappeared. Recently, I did an entire project upgrading the outside of this office door with RGB lights and big blocky Cyberpunk starship trim, and it turned out awesome. So inside this office, I couldn't just have plain blank doors with wooden trim. I needed something that fit the vibe of this new space, of my studio, so I dove into Fusion to design up some trim. I went for a similar blocky, angular style with chamfered corners at the top of the door, but no integrated RGB, much smaller, slimmer pieces, a much smaller scale version of the other door. This is definitely a point where I was feeling the weight of time, everything taking longer than I anticipated. I needed to get these parts done. This is where I was thrilled that I have my Prusa print farm on my side. All 12 printers were up and running, powering through getting these pieces done. And when it comes to doing a project like this, there is just no replacement for more print heads and more print beds. One door frame was 18 pieces of trim. The second one, of course, is another 18. Plus little glinty bits and bobs that are going to get added on. The big warehouse door trim was one assembly that I put together on the floor and then installed as a unit. Here, it was a lot simpler to do things piece by piece. I designed this so I'd screw in one piece, apply some PLA gloop for an adhesive to bond the pieces together, install my next piece, and then the following one would get screws. So every other piece had screws in it and just adhesive between those sections. Along the header over the door, I just went for like a keystone. I didn't bother putting any screws up there. I just started to piece together from side to side and bridge the gap, and I do regret that. This is a sunk cost fallacy sort of situation that I hit in almost every project at some point, where I could tweak the design files. I could add a few millimeters here, a screw hole there, and they would fit better in the real world. But that's 3+ hours of print time per part that I modify, the time to modify them. If they're not quite right, there's another additional edit after that. It starts to push a project day by day before you know it, and then a project has the chance of overrunning even more than it already is, or dying on the vine. So in this particular instance, I pushed through. At the end of the day, you folks are seeing it 5-6 feet away on camera right now, and I think it looks really good as it sits. I have to remember sometimes that even me sitting in here right in front of these pieces, I'm not going to be nitpicking them up close by the millimeter on a day-to-day basis. And you folks on video aren't going to get that close to it unless I say, here's a gap, there's a gap, everywhere's a gap. I'm sorry, that was awful. That doesn't mean that I forget about those things though. That chasing perfection never leaves my mind, and those imperfections that I compromise on, they weigh on me and they compound over time. And in this particular project, this is where it all fell apart. It's important for folks to remember that this is my job. It's how I pay my bills. This year, as I'm looking back at my growth, it wasn't as good of a year as I would have liked it to have been. I lost my studio and my best friend earlier this year. I got Mandic Labs 2.0 and excellent sponsors with Prusa and PCBWay. But I'm comparing to other channels out there, and I'm just not seeing the growth I'd like to in comparison to them. I was trying to make this video different, make it more engaging, and reach a wider audience. But when I reached this point in the project, I sat down and was working on a bulk of the edit, and it just defaulted back to do this, then that, then this tutorial stuff. I hated it. Every imperfection I let go in this project was still adding up on a calculator in my brain. Those things never went away. And when I reached the point of hating this video, it compounded, it multiplied, and it resulted in a full-on autistic shutdown. I'm very lucky to have a partner who understands that situation. Ruby came in and we had a meeting. I showed her a rough cut of the video and she agreed. She said, "You're not telling a story of how you did build it and your experience building it, your overwhelm of the failures, and your true story, your honest story, and the realities of every project I do, where they all have some element of this. But some of you hopefully will commiserate with the trials and tribulations. I hope this is something we can connect on, because honestly that zeroed out the calculator for me. It reset my drive for this project and let me get it finished. So let me show you the rest of this awesome space coming together." Once I no longer had to focus on fixing the video, the project just unlocked from there. A curtain went up to control sound and light in the space. Shelving went in, so my storage system is no longer floor. And I threw together a kitchenette so my 70+ hours a week can be more comfortable in here. Doesn't mean I stopped designing and 3D printing though. I printed up these PCCF parts on the Core 1L. These are keystone brackets that lock into the shelving unit, and then the counter for the kitchenette can sit on top of them and they can get screwed in. These proved to be plenty solid and a super efficient use of space. I didn't need a 2x4 or even a metal pole to support that side of the counter. I could use the shelving unit I already had with some simple 3D printing. Once I had that keystone locked in, I could throw together a couple of brackets and a couple pieces of wood, and I got a shelf for additional storage above the kitchenette for tea and other odds and ends. And then came in this adapter plate. This mounts to the back of an old 27-inch Dell monitor that I had, so I could mount it to a ceiling-mounted TV bracket. This is really useful for me to be able to check focus and lighting while I'm filming myself in this space. I can quickly look up at the monitor, check how things are looking, and get back to filming. All of this put together, the curtain, the shelves, the kitchenette, and the TV hanging over it, really gives me a van life, tiny home vibe. And honestly, it's really cozy, super functional, and I love the way it turned out. With that beautiful functionality added to the space, it's time to add some flair and give it that MandicReally vibe. I was able to pick up some LED channels that are meant to go into a wood slat wall like this, making installation really easy. Obviously, RGB is going to require power and control, so I designed up this enclosure for a 5-volt power supply and a controller board. Fun fact, I printed this in Prusament PETG V0, which is UL listed and flame retardant, so it's a really good choice for electronics enclosures. Now the controller going into this thing is part of the foundation of Mandic Labs at this point. I've used this PCB produced for me by this video's sponsor, PCBWay, in almost every project in this space. PCBWay has been a supporter of Mandic Labs since day one. They offer a range of services, not just PCB manufacturing like this y'all board, but also CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, metal 3D printing, plastic 3D printing, injection molding, and more. If you're looking to do one-off parts or small-scale manufacturing to get a product out there, PCBWay has services to help you get off the ground. Check out everything they have to offer you for your projects and your business at the link in the description. With WLED set up on the y'all board, our RGB wired up, a flip of a switch, and we can let the RGB bathe over us. Of course, RGB alone can't be the only light in here. With the windows covered, we need studio lighting. So in comes a wall-mounted boom arm so I can reposition one light, namely this light mat, a slim low-profile light box. And for a second large light source, I got this Amaran Verge Max. This is a slim but large light source that's meant for small compact spaces like my office and desk situation. So I mounted it on their clamp mount to the end of my desk. And those key lights combined with a couple of little supplementary lights like a hair light back here are letting me light myself and the space. Pretty complimentary, I think. Now there's one more piece of organization that's actually deeper than that to talk about. The Founder's Wall. On the surface, this is my purple wall with Multiboard added onto it. The organizational system that you can use as a 3D printable kind of pegboard. Organize your tools and 3D printing parts, and the sky's the limit. I've done a whole project with this in the past, and we will be visiting more Multiboard in the studio in the future. This is about more than that. This is about the people, the companies that make Mandic Labs work and keep on running. When projects like this one are getting overwhelming and taxing and I'm getting dejected by them, I'll be able to turn around from my desk and see this wall with the companies and, more importantly, the founding members. Those names are people who believe in what it is that I'm doing enough to support my work. These are people helping to keep the wheels turning around here. It's not going to fix the pressure, it's not going to clear the calculator, but it is a motivating thing to know that real people out there on the other side of the camera lens, when I'm here by myself, talking to myself in this little box, these people are right over my shoulder, believing in what I'm doing. With our sappiness out of the way, it's time for our final details to wrap up this project. As I put the last details on, I can't help but wonder, a lot's changed since our meeting, so what's Ruby think of all this?
Soggy smudge. All right. Let's see. Oh, wow. You know what? This is so much cooler than me looking at the security camera. Oh, this is awesome. Oh, yeah, this is so much better. Yeah.
Like I said,
this is nice.
Even since the meeting we had, like, I feel like it's changed immensely since then.
It really has. It really has, yeah. Well, I mean, plus there's like a lot of stuff that I can't see from the security camera.
This project was taxing, overwhelming, and took far, far too long. But I've said that in a lot of videos since moving into Mandic Labs, and I hope that after this video you have a little more context for what I mean. Some folks seem to feel that I'm just overworking myself, and to a point I'm sure that's true, but there's so much more to it than just that. But I felt like I needed to share this with you. Once Ruby said that that was the direction I should go, it clicked immediately that she was completely correct. Thank you again to PCBWay for sponsoring this video, Prusa Research for sponsoring Mandic Labs in general, and Multiboard as well. I don't make a big enough point about that. We will talk about it in the future, but Multiboard is a supporter of Mandic Labs, and I appreciate them for it. Seriously, thank you folks, one and all, for watching this content, for sticking with me through 2025, and I hope we can do so much more in 2026. If your brain works like mine, if this video resonated with you, you're not alone, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Be sure to get subscribed to ensure your 3D prints don't fail. It's not a guarantee, but it can't hurt. See you in the next one, folks. This chair's comfortable, but getting out of it is a little tricky.